very much, Chair, and thank you, Minister. Minister, if I could begin by asking about the diversity of teaching staff. So we've received evidence as part of these sessions that ethnic minorities are underrepresented in the teaching profession, and that actually has led to problems in diversifying the curriculum. Some subjects qualify for bursary funding, for example, but history specifically does not. And we've been told that this is a barrier to greater diversity of teaching staff. So has the government considered any targeted bursaries to help improve that diversity where other funding doesn't apply?
I think having a diverse profession is important, and there is some good news on that front. So, for example, in November 2019, 14.7% of the teaching workforce was from an ethnic minority background, compared to 20% of England's population identifying as an ethnic minority. So, good, but more to do. But then if you look at the most recent initial teacher training census, ethnic minority trainees made up 19% of all trainees. So that is a welcome sign. In terms of the bursaries, we haven't used the bursaries in order to target particular backgrounds in terms of coming to teaching. We have used the bursaries to incentivize subjects where we struggle to get the numbers that we need in our school system. So that's why there's no bursary for history, because we had a lot of history graduates applying to be history teachers. In fact, we exceeded our target. Where we struggle is in subjects like physics and maths, modern languages, and so that's why those bursaries are tight. And we review it every year to see what success there has been in recruiting.
Thank you, Minister. One of my questions was going to be if you monitor diversity of the workforce and what actions you're taking. You've answered that question, so I'll move over that. Coming back to history itself as a subject matter, obviously the DfE has been very successful in reaching its targets in terms of history teachers, but obviously there is still a problem in terms of the diversity of the history teachers themselves. And again, some of the evidence we've received is because fewer ethnic minority students choose to take this subject themselves at GCSE and beyond, who then go on to become teachers. So is there a recognition at the DfE that the curriculum may be a cause of this, or is there something that the DfE could do to try and encourage that, maybe not through the bursary system as you've outlined, but then earlier on at GCSE and beyond, encouraging more diverse ranges of pupils to take up that subject?
I think my view about that is that we want more young people taking those core academic subjects that widen opportunities. And I regard the English Baccalaureate combination of GCSEs as a social mobility performance measure, because they are the subjects that keep the wider opportunities open for all young people, whatever they want to go and do next after the age of 16. If you take that combination, there are more doors open to you. And one of the challenges that we face at the university level is that in terms of social mobility, is that some children from some disadvantaged backgrounds have not chosen the right A-levels to get into the most selective universities. And often the choice of A-levels is restricted because of the choice at GCSE. So we're trying to do both things. I think it was Absana who talked about narrowing the curriculum. I don't think we have narrowed the curriculum by encouraging more entry into the EBAC. I think what we do, because you talk about science and English and maths and foreign language and the humanities, and I think that is a very broad, and there's still room beyond the EBAC to take other subjects like music and art. But I'm quite pleased by the increase we've seen in the proportion of pupils from ethnic minorities taking the EBAC. It was 2011, it was 21.2%, and by that rising to nearly a half by 2019. So these are great successes. And if you look at history itself, the proportion of pupils entering the humanities EBAC pillar, i.e. history or geography has increased from 48% in 2010 to 82% in 2020. This is a staggeringly high figure. And then if you break that down into history and geography, history has gone from 31% in 2010 to 44% in 2020. So I think the performance measures of the EBAC is a very important way of encouraging more young people from all backgrounds to take those academic subjects. And with more to do, we'll continue.
Thank you for that, Minister. That number is very encouraging indeed. If I can move to a set of concluding questions for this session, Minister, if I can begin by talking about the petitions that the committee has received themselves. Obviously, the chair outlined just the sheer volume of the number of petitions and indeed the number of signatories to these various petitions that we've received. So clearly there is a lot of interest in this issue, and it's an important issue to many. So if I could begin by asking you what advice you would give to young people who may feel that the curriculum that they're being taught doesn't reflect the breadth of British history and the contribution of all its citizens, and who maybe aren't lucky enough to be in an area or a school who are prioritising this. What avenues are open to them to take?
Well, there are organisations like the Runnymede Trust that have resources that can be accessed by schools and I assume therefore by pupils. And the Historical Association will have a lot of materials as well. So I think if the school itself isn't providing the curriculum that young people want, and they haven't been able to, they can always raise these issues with the school, with the teacher, with the head teacher. But there are organisations like I said, the Runnymede Trust, that have resources that they can that are accessible to young people.
Thank you for that, Minister. And I think we've touched on this next point throughout all of the questions, but perhaps a kind of summing up of the viewpoint of the government would be helpful here. Again, we've heard of the various barriers from the evidence that we've received in terms of diversifying the curriculum, in terms of training, resources, the need to devote most of teacher time to exam content, for example. The government has said that it doesn't want to mandate from above when it comes to this, and it's I think been fairly clear that what is currently in the national curriculum does give the breadth of scope to be able to teach a more diverse curriculum. Is that a fair assessment? Would you say that it's not wanting to take a top-down approach here? It's really calling on schools to put in the effort themselves and try and diversify where the curriculum allows.
I think that is right. The philosophy behind our reforms to education is to sort of unleash the professionalism of very able people in the teaching profession, and of course there has to be some. We want certain things from our education system. We want children to be able to read and write, and we want them to have a strong general knowledge. But the more prescriptive you are, the less professional autonomy you are unleashing. And the rise in standards that we've seen since 2010 are multifaceted. But one of them, I believe, is that we are, encouraging that professional autonomy, and that is through the curriculum, but it's also through the academies program, free schools program, and so it's always a kind of reluctance to pile on more requirements onto schools. I mean, we do it. I have to say, we've required schools to teach the RSHE curriculum, and that applies to academies and it applies to schools. There's a requirement for universal infant free school meals that applies to maintained schools and it applies to academies. So we have on occasion breached that principle. And if you look at the primary curriculum, we require phonics to be taught and so on. But every time you do that, you chip away at that professional autonomy. And I think that certainly a subject like history, which is so all-encompassing, we have set those requirements that I've set out, what is in Key Stage 3 and so on, that does require schools to teach Britain's colonial history. And even outside those specific requirements, there's scope for teachers to teach the kind of curriculum that the young people that are signing your petition want to see taught in their school. So I think that's a principle that we're kind of loath to breach on too many occasions in our education, because the danger is that it does detract from that professional autonomy, and it's that professional autonomy that is driving up standards.
Thank you, Minister. That's very, very clear. So thank you. And the final question from me then is, in the evidence sessions we've been having, we've obviously asked the participants to tell us what they think the government could do. And one witness, and indeed many witnesses alluded to this, but one witness termed it as fund what works. So therefore, I wonder if there's scope for the DfE considering making funding available to ensure that the resources and training that are available, and we have heard many good examples of resources and training that are available out there, are more easily accessible and available to those schools who would like to diversify their curriculum.
Well, I suppose I would say that the school funding is that we give to schools, which is not inconsiderable, and we had a 3-year settlement that is the best increase that schools have had for a decade. It's meant to also encompass funds for curriculum materials. We established the Education Endowment Foundation to evaluate effective curricula and teaching practices, particularly skewed towards how do we improve the life chances of children from the most disadvantaged backgrounds. So there is an evidence base emerging from the work that the EEF has done. And I think, and as I said, there are organisations like the Runnymede Trust, Historical Association, who have very high quality curriculum materials that are available to schools. But I think what I'm hoping we'll see in the next few years is a greater focus on curriculum and curriculum content in schools, both driven by the early career framework for teacher training, but also the inspection framework from Ofsted that requires schools to really focus a little bit more now on the curriculum than they may have done in the past. So I think all those will help, I think, to ensure that we have a very rich, knowledge-rich curriculum in our schools, and that does give scope and time to teach a wider general knowledge curriculum encompassing the subject areas that the petitioners are campaigning about.
Minister, thank you very much. No more questions from me, Chair.